This morning, I want to talk about how grasping is not intimacy, even though grasping brings us close to whatever it is we're grasping onto. It is not the same thing as being intimate with that thing or that person or that situation. One of the many gifts that this practice has provided me is a way to slow down and observe my experience, to become more intimate with my experience, if you will. And not in an obsessive way, the way I used to do it, but in a way that really offers spaciousness and freedom. This opens the door for us to cease trying to fix situations. And maybe this goes to Anne's recent trip, but simply observe what is happening, not always trying to fix them, get in there and get them to meet our expectations, but just observe. In other words, we watch our movie rather than starring in it. I love that metaphor. So we watch the movie, we're not starring in it. And when we do that, we begin to see the richness and the beauty of our experience and all the mystery as it unfolds. Meanwhile, before too long, I'm doing that, I get blindsided by reactivity. Something triggers my attention. It might be pleasant, it might be unpleasant, and I react. I'm back into reactive mode. And suddenly, once again, I'm starring in the movie, not just watching it. I am in the movie. I'm either trying to avoid the unpleasant, push it away, or hold on to the pleasant, right back into reactive mode. And what that does is immediately takes me out of the present moment. It takes me back into trying to manage or fix the situation, control the situation, control the person, whomever or whatever it might be. I can always tell because I get restless, I get annoyed about fixing the situation in front of me. I can just feel the control vibe arising. And suddenly the situation demands to be fixed. I'm just focused on fixing it. It might be someone making a noise, it might be an attractive food that I'm grasping after, anything that calls my attention outward and takes me out of the present moment. It happens all the time. So, simply put, reactivity is that space between the way things are and the way we wish them to be. As soon as we get into wishing them to be different, we're in reactive mode. And how often does this happen in our relationships? How often do we get reactive or entangled in the pleasantness or the unpleasantness of our interactions with others, especially those to whom we're the closest? We get locked in this push pull with others, otherwise known as grasping, and sometimes mistaking that for intimacy. And when it goes beyond trying to control our environment to controlling others, which as you often hear me say is where the rubber meets the road, we really can get into heavy suffering for ourselves and others. We fall into this entanglement with trying to micromanage others, have them do our bidding. And with our mindfulness, we see this pattern is always lurking around. It is always with us, waiting to rear its head. All of our biases, our judgments, our beliefs, our fantasies, our needs, our wants come into play. We're grasping the pleasant and avoiding the unpleasant. We're in reactive mode. And both of those, whether pleasant or unpleasant, involve trying to control the situation, trying to control others, trying to control the uncontrollable. What we believe that are biases, judgments, beliefs, fantasies. The Buddha called these delusions. He called these delusions. If we're biased, if we're judging, if we're believing something that's not true, if we're caught up in fantasy, anything that our ego clings to in attempting to create our reality, and I say that in quotes, reality, the Buddha called delusions. And out of this imagined reality, not as things are as we wish them to be, comes reactivity. And no surprise, out of reactivity comes suffering, our own and that of others with whom we interact. Now, let me be really clear here. This is not easy stuff to let go of. we've been holding on to these scripts, these beliefs, these delusions, which really make up a lot of our ego our whole lives. I mean, these are the stories we tell ourselves, about others, about how others should be, about how we should be. And letting go of that requires the very difficult challenge of living with uncertainty. We just don't like it. But it asks us to cultivate what the Zen folks call don't know mind, don't know mind. Instead of going in with, you know, assumptions and preconceived ideas, we go in with don't know mind, which is a way of embracing the uncertainty. So in the Mulla Sutta, this is from the Pali Canon, the Buddha invokes this wonderful image of a great, beautiful tree. I love this teaching from the suttas. And growing up and around the tree and slowly choking the life out of it are the three vines of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, the three poisons: greed, hatred, delusion, are sometimes called attachment, greed, aversion, hatred, and delusion or ignorance. So choking the tree are the three poisons. So this gardener comes along, a practitioner, that might be you or me, and tries to free the tree from these invasive vines. But in order to do that, we must become intimate and familiar with both the tree and the vines. And this is a long, careful, intentional process. This is our practice, to stay with the metaphor. And we don't fix it by cutting down the tree. That's not what we do. Rather, we carefully and skillfully over time remove the tangled vines of greed, hatred, and delusion with love and attention and with mindful awareness. And when we do this, the tree thrives. We see the tree clearly. It's uncovered from the vines which were hiding it. This is freedom that the practice promises us. The challenge of our practice is to mindfully, slowly, lovingly, and thoroughly untangle the grasping of the vines. Let me say that again. The challenge of our practice is to mindfully, slowly, and lovingly untangle the grasping vines. And this requires all the teachings of the Dharma, all the teachings which the Buddha offered us. So in other words, we become intimate with the pleasant and unpleasant aspects of our experience without grasping, clinging, or pushing away. We learn to slow down and watch our experiences with equanimity and curiosity, without judgment, without shame, and most importantly, without reactivity. We disengage from this outward appearance, which includes all the vines of who we are, to what really matters. We touch into this open, compassionate, loving heart, which is in all of us, if we can get the vines away. Both in the compassionate, loving heart directed both toward ourselves and others. And the beauty of this, when we can do it, is it gives us some distance, some separation from the stories we've been telling ourselves, and see them just as stories, not as truth, not as fact, not as defining who we are, not as identifying that being who we are. And as a result, our equanimity stabilizes, it becomes more constant. So that's what I mean when I say grasping is not intimacy. Intimacy is free of grasping, it's free of clinging, it's free of pushing stuff away. So I want to leave you this morning with a wonderful quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese teacher who died a year or so ago. And he said, quote, "There is only one kind of success that really matters. The success of transforming ourselves, transforming our afflictions, fears, and anger. This is the kind of success, the kind of power that will benefit us and others without causing any damage," close quotes. Let me read that again. There is only one kind of success that really matters. the success of transforming ourselves, transforming our afflictions, our fears, and anger. This is the kind of success, the kind of power that will benefit us and others without causing any real damage. So let me leave it there.